Well, David Spencer is the head of crime and justice for the right of centre think tank Policy Exchange. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, we spoke to a former judge earlier who explained, and it was really helpful actually, how we found ourselves in this situation. So the first thing she wanted to say is that the Sentencing Council is an independent body, packed full of senior judges and very experienced individuals who have spent some time in the criminal justice system. And the whole idea when it was set up was to provide guidelines for judges when they decide on sentencing so that there is consistency right across the country so that people, very simply put, if you commit the same crime, face the same kind of sentence. But there is an issue, isn't there? Because it seems from the statistics that there is a disproportionate number of people who go to prison for the same crimes if they come from a minority ethnic background. And as I understand it, that is what the government is trying to address. Is that correct?
Well, broadly, but not quite right. So first of all, this isn't actually about the government trying to correct it. This is about the Sentencing Council, which, as you say, is an independent body. And I think there's two really important points here. So first of all, where there is disparity, that does not automatically mean that there's unlawful discrimination. We simply don't know, actually, at the moment. What the Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice has said is that more work needs to be done to understand it, and that's right. But certainly, the answer to disparity is not, or in fact, discrimination is not extra discrimination. The answer is sorting out the problem in the first place. But the second really important issue here is that this is not about individual sentencing which judges pass. This is about an issue about overarching sentencing policy. And that's rightly a matter for government and parliament. And what we're seeing in this row is an arm's length body, the Sentencing Council, basically thumbing their nose at the government, who have said they're not happy with this, on a matter of overarching policy. And that's a really important question for how government and the state and parliament works on these sorts of issues.
I mean, I don't think that that's how they would see it. They've seen this disparity and said, we need to look into this. And it's not just affecting people from ethnic minorities. It also includes the under 25s and pregnant women as well. And the suggestion is that perhaps judges are less well informed about these cohorts of individuals and should consider perhaps whether non-custodial sentences would be more appropriate in some cases. And also that the idea that the judges should be really at arm's length from the government is an absolute central tenet, isn't it, of the way our democracy works?
Well, certainly judicial independence in relation to individual sentencing, you're right. But this isn't about individual sentencing. This is about overarching sentencing policy. And it's right that the elected government and our elected representatives in Parliament, in fact, given we live in a parliamentary democracy, it is important that both government and Parliament have a say on overarching sentencing policy. No one here, I don't think, is saying that actually government should be intervening on an individual defendant's sentence. That's not the issue here. But it's about overarching sentencing policy, and that's rightly a matter for government and for Parliament.
Just because you commission a report into someone's background, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that that individual will be given a more lenient sentence, does it?
Not necessarily, but actually when I've spent, from my former career, a lot of time in court and, have seen and heard pre-sentence reports issued. And the reality is that a pre-sentence report, and there's evidence and reports about this, which says a good pre-sentence report is more likely to lead to a non-custodial sentence. So actually there is that issue, but also this is about the automatic nature of when pre-sentence reports get issued. And Policy Exchange is publishing a report on all of this early this morning, so that'll be coming out in an hour or so.
But it's important to point out, for example, a report like this can also increase somebody's prison sentence. It doesn't necessarily make it more lenient, right?
But the issue here is about the automatic nature of the pre-sentence report for some groups and not for others. And it's that automatic nature, introducing that into the sentencing process, which makes it unfair. That's the issue. It's the automatic nature of it.
I think because there is a suggestion that there is a gap in knowledge among some judges around certain groups of people that needs to be filled.
Well, I'm all in favour of, judges having information so that they can sentence people appropriately, that is not an issue for me. But what is an issue is that it is the automatic nature. Now, a judge can ask for a pre-sentence report on anyone, or any defendant they're dealing with. But the issue here is that automatically the guideline says a judge should normally obtain one for these groups and not others. And that's the inherent unfairness that's being introduced into the system.
But the issue is the system is unfair already. This is about addressing an unfairness that exists because people make allegations, and this is the argument in favour of it, people make allegations about two-tier policing or two-tier sentencing. But actually, what we're saying, or what the statistics seem to show, is that people from ethnic minorities are more likely to be arrested, charged and convicted than their white counterparts.
Well, we know there is a disparity for some offences, but what we don't know is the detail of why that happens. So therefore, introducing discrimination, which is what this is, into the system automatically is really problematic.
But you say it's discrimination, it's additional information. I don't know how you leap from that to say, right, some people are being advantaged. I don't follow that logic.
Because it is the automatic nature for some groups of people receiving a pre-sentence report and not others. And that is fundamentally unfair.
But the downgrading of a sentence is not automatic. You're still trusting the judgment of judges.
Indeed, and it is, and it's right that it should be up to judges. But the reality is, if some groups automatically are entitled to this pathway in their sentencing and others are not, that is an inherent unfairness that's being introduced into the system.
Yeah, and we need to kind of, I suppose, also acknowledge the context of the criminal justice system at the moment, with prisons being overcrowded and so on. Would you like to see more people being sent to prison for longer?
Well, you're right, of course, that, our prisons are full to bursting point at the moment, and that is a long-standing problem, for well over a decade now. So that is absolutely right. What we are seeing is where individuals are committing huge numbers of offences. We looked at this about a year or so ago, and we saw people with 150, 200 convictions who on their next lot of 10 convictions were not being sent to prison. They were being given community orders and suspended sentences. And it is difficult to see how that is the right way to go when we're trying to keep crime down on the streets.
This is really going to pit potentially the government against the judiciary and certainly against the Sentencing Council. Do you think that could cause problems long term?
Well, I think the interesting thing here is that actually, although you get the ding-dong in the House of Parliament about this sort of stuff, it's not really a party political issue. This is a cross-party issue because you've got the government on one side and the Shadow Justice Secretary on the other, all saying this is the way to go.
No, I'm saying the conflict comes between the government and the judiciary, and is that something that we want?
Indeed, but also we've heard from, I don't know whether any of them have been named yet, but we've heard from members of the judiciary. I've spoken to members of the judiciary over the last few days on this issue, and some of them are pretty concerned about what the Sentencing Council have put out. So I don't think it's automatically a battle that's going to take place and cause difficulty. Ultimately, on a matter of overarching sentencing policy, the government and Parliament must be preeminent. That has to be the way it works in a democracy.
OK, thank you very much. That's David Spencer from the Writer Centre think tank, the Policy Exchange.